All right, so the recording is now started, and again, it is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. So this is Indiana Tech. This is MBA 6320, Leading Global Projects, and we're in Module 1, and of course, I am your professor, Dr. Michael Pirazio. So as we go through the PowerPoint slides, as we do every week, we review the assignments for every week. And that way, if you have any questions, you can certainly stop and ask along the way. And I'll always ask as well before we finish for the evening, just to be sure that we're all clear about what it is that we need to do. But since this is the first class, we're going to go through the course description, learning objectives, textbooks, and that sort of thing. And then we'll get right into what's expected in terms of the assignments for week 1. So as far as the course, right, so this course presents a framework for project management that requires cross-functional integration of key business processes within the firm across the network of firms that comprise key aspects within project management. So this course approaches project management from a managerial perspective and introduces concepts in a format useful for management decision-making. Basic terms, concepts, and principles are examined in light of how they interrelate and interface with the firm across projects globally. And illustrations are taken from corporate applications of these concepts to show you how projects and program management can be implemented. So then we have several learning objectives for this particular course. But before I go through them, I just want to give you a little background about myself. I've been teaching for more than 8 years. I've been working in project management for over 20 years. And my doctorate degree is with a specialization in project management. Most of my working life, I've been working with international companies. So it's perfectly suited for this particular type of course because working globally is very different than working on projects within the US or within your state. So with that, let's just carry on leading learning outcomes. So we need to understand what it is that we're going to cover over the next several weeks. So upon the successful completion of this course, you will be able to first identify and analytically solve problems related to inventory management, facility location, and project management optimization. Then we want to identify and utilize computer resources to research and analyze supply chain operations. And then we're going to analyze the global environment of strategic alliances in modern business and their impact on project management. And then describe the individual process of project management and their interrelationships within individual companies. And then go on to distinguish the management components of project management and describe the tools and techniques useful in implementing and completing a project internationally. And finally, produce a project proposal with graduate level defense. So they are the objectives for this particular course. This particular course doesn't have a single textbook. It utilizes a variety of resources, articles, websites, videos, etc., all located within the learning resource section of each module. And you should be able to access them. And the information and citations are noted throughout the course for these resources. So as you're going through and you're clicking through on those links, you should not have any issues. If you do, please send me a quick note and I'll check with IT and see if there's something going on. oftentimes, if you are having difficulty opening a link or getting to something, it's maybe because your cache is full. So the first thing you should always do is try and empty your cache, and then restart your computer, and that usually puts you back on track and you're good. But again, if you have any technical issues of that nature, you can reach out to me, or also reach out to IT and copy me, just so I know that you're having some difficulty, just in case. I don't normally have any issues, but just want to, to make sure, everybody uses different browsers and so on. And once in a while, we'll have some kind of technical problem. All right. So in module 1, the overview. So in this module, we'll see how project management drives organizational success as it provides the means to deliver business outcomes. So the objectives in this module, we want to compare project management within project leadership roles. You want to differentiate definitions of a global project and describe global project leadership knowledge areas. So every week you'll have different activities to complete. So we'll go over them, and I'll read through them again just in case you have questions about what you need to do for the assignments. Or as we're going through week to week, when we get to next week, if you have a question about this week's assignment or the upcoming assignment, that's the time to bring it up and discuss. All right, so this week, you have a course preparation quiz. It's just a quick tool to make sure you're familiar with our course. And again, there's unlimited attempts at this one, so please just make sure you do it as soon as possible. And also, the university uses this course prep quiz to ensure that everybody's in the classroom and participating. So it's really important that you do this one as soon as you can. And then every week we have a discussion post. This week it'll be about global project definition, and the first post is due by Thursday. And then this week we have 2 assignments. We have Module 1, Global Project Definitions, and then Module 1, Assignment 2, Infographic, Project Management Leadership Knowledge Areas. And then finally, we have a Tech Live reflection, which is a brief paragraph about attending the Tech Live, so this session, or watching the recording. So other than the first discussion post that's due Thursday night by midnight, all the work is due by Sunday, again by 11:59 p.m. or just before midnight as well. Now, as far as the weekly Tech Live reflections, they are not mandatory. So you do not have to attend these every week, although I'm happy to have you join, since I will be here regardless every Tuesday at 8 p.m. But if you can't, for whatever reason, it is recorded. I will provide a link in the announcements so you can get to it in order for you to review. And again, if you have any questions, so then you can reach out to me, etc. Right. So, and then complete your Tech Live reflection as well. All right. So the very first assignment after the quiz is the discussion post. And you need to answer the following, of course, in your own words. So how would you define a global project? And you want to use examples from the reading or your own research to support your definitions. And the requirements of this discussion include the ability to do this in 2 parts, right? You need to give us your personal initial response to the discussion post, again by Thursday at 11:59 p.m. And then you need to post substantive feedback to at least 2 of your classmates by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. And substantive means, a few sentences, a paragraph or two, right? Nothing more than that, nothing more than 2 paragraphs. So this doesn't need to be a novel. Make it short and sweet. Make sure you address the questions, and then we're good. So before we go on, this particular assignment, others that are related to it, speaks to global projects. And then how is that really different than any other project? So before I go on to the assignments, I want to kind of address that. That's part of the question here. You need to use your readings and so forth to provide a reply. However, I'm also going to address it as well, since I've worked on global projects most of my 20 plus years in project management, to give you a little more detail and a little bit more to frame up your discussion post. So a global project is a project that's planned and executed across multiple countries, cultures, and often time zones, involving stakeholders, teams, resources from different parts of the world. So these projects typically support multinational organizations or initiatives that require coordination beyond a single geographic location, such as implementing an enterprise system across global offices, managing an international supply chain initiative, or launching a product in multiple markets simultaneously. Now, after we all experienced COVID several years ago, it kind of changed the trajectory of project management. I was doing a lot of work within a particular geographic location. Everybody went to work in this location. We, for the most part, met in a certain conference room where we managed the projects, and we had meetings once a week, etc. And, if we needed to speak to our counterparts elsewhere, we might do that via phone conference and so forth. But after COVID, and people started to realize they didn't necessarily need to come into the office to manage a project, more organizations made a conscious decision about hiring the best talent, anywhere in the world, right? We're no longer committed to working within geographic locations. So we can work anywhere, right? As long as we can find the resource. So that really did change the way we work. And now almost every project that I work anywhere has some type of international component or global component to it. Maybe it's a company we're using to do a particular part of the project, or we're outsourcing to particular resources. It's not uncommon to outsource IT resources to different countries like India, China, South America, etc. All right. So what makes a global project different from more traditional or domestic projects is really the added complexity. So while all projects deal with scope, schedule, cost, quality, global projects must also navigate cultural differences, language barriers, varying legal and regulatory environments, and time zone challenges. Communications become more complicated as teams may not share the same working hours or communication styles. So, for example, a decision-making approach that works well in one culture may not be effective in another, requiring leaders to adapt their style. And also where you work, can really be different with other resources in other parts of the world. So, for example, I've done some work, and I still do work for consulting work for a company in Saudi Arabia. And within those companies, a lot of times women are not allowed to work within the same office or on the same assignments as men. sometimes they're very segregated, right? And that's just part of their culture, right? So you need to make sure that you understand that. And oftentimes as well, in that particular country or within Saudi Arabia, if you're a male project manager, you'll work with male project managers or male counterparts within Saudi Arabia. And then a female resource will likely have to have a female project manager to work with. Not always, they are becoming a little bit more progressive, but customarily, that is how their resources are segmented when we're working in that part of the world, right? It changes. We just need to understand what those differences are so we can pivot and do what we need to do in order to keep everyone engaged. So another key difference in stakeholder management, global projects often involve a broader and more diverse set of stakeholders, including international clients, government entities, and cross-functional teams. So this requires a higher level of coordination and sensitivity to different expectations and norms. So additionally, risks are more complex in global projects, including geopolitical risks, currency fluctuations, and supply chain disruptions. So I did a lot of work for a international airline and their tour operation division. And part of the risk related to that whole project is when you're setting up prices, how we want to sell in the United States, and the customer is in a different country, or we're buying services from them, like hotel, car rental, tours, etc. You have to agree upon a selling rate, right? Whatever that selling rate is. And when the exchange rate changes because of currency fluctuation, sometimes that can be a positive and sometimes it's a negative for whoever is selling. So when I'm buying from the US, I would have to negotiate within these other countries and say that I was only going to pay X number of dollars equivalent to US dollars, regardless what the value of their currency is. So I can understand what kind of profit I was going to make on my end of the deal. Otherwise, if the fluctuation changed, the currency fluctuation changed in such a way that the tour operator or the hotel or car rental is now costing me more than what I'm charging in the US and marketing and advertising, right? That's problematic. We'd lose money on every transaction. So things like that are very complicated in a global environment. So really, in contrast, non-global or domestic projects are typically confined to one country or a region, making communications, legal compliance, and other coordination more straightforward. While they can still be complex, they generally do not require the same level of cultural awareness or logistical coordination across borders. Same thing with work that I've done over the years with a little company called Foot Locker Corporation, right? So Foot Locker is a global entity, and logistically, sometimes we have to sell sneakers in one country or another country based on what's popular, and sometimes we need to send from the US market to, let's say, the European market or the Asian market. And how you make those transfers and logistics of that coordination can be fairly complicated. So really, in summary, what we're trying to say here is global projects are distinguished not just by their geographic scope, but the increased complexity in communication, coordination, cultural understanding, and risk management that comes with operating across international boundaries. So again, it's very, very different working on an international project versus a U.S. or domestic project. So Matthew asked, will we need to submit a reflection if we are attending the class? Yes, you do. Every week you need to send or participate in the reflection. So you either participate by attending the live session or you listen to the recording, but then, either way, you need to complete the reflection. Yeah, no problem. Well, good question, because I usually have that question every semester. And, bottom line is you don't have to do any of it, but, it makes a difference. It's not worth a lot of points. However, it's worth enough that it could make a difference between a B and an A or a C and a B. So to me, it's a very easy assignment to do. And, I would do it versus not doing it, right? 10 points is 10 points. All right. So before I go on to the assignments, are there any questions about the discussion post before I continue? So Cassidy's asking, what's the most complex global project I've ever run into and what makes it complex? I would say I did some work for a distribution company and they sold electronics. And when you're selling electronics and you're sending them all over the world, right? If you have customers buying from your company, it was very complicated because every country has its own legal parameters that you have to work within on how different electronics are sent. So, for example, years ago, it wasn't a big deal, right? If somebody were going to buy, let's say, a bunch of smartphones, right, or cell phones, iPhones, for example, right? You just buy them, you put them under the belly of the plane, you send them over, and call it a day. However, if you remember years ago, they were having problems in different airlines where some of the batteries were catching on fire, right, on some laptops, and they didn't know why. So a lot of different countries and even states have a lot of rules about how you ship those types of materials. And it's not limited to just things like logistic companies. Even, I did some work for very large grocery store chains. So Ahold Corporation, or Giant Corporation, if you know who they are, is a pretty big grocery store chain. And one of the problems that they had within the grocery store chain that people just don't think about is that there's poisonous things that are sold within a grocery store chain, but the government provides different regulations on how you must remove that from the premise of the store. So once the shelf life expires, you need to do something with it. So you need to follow the law. And if you don't follow the law, you can get fined. And if you're fined, you're not just fined, by one location. Oftentimes you're fined by the number of locations you have. So, if it's a $50,000 fine, the company might think, who cares? It's not so much in the grand scheme of things. However, if you're now multiplying that by 400 locations, 400 stores, that's a big fine to pay. So again, different international regulations, laws, those things, I believe, are probably one of the most complex things that you'll have to work on. Because in some countries, a lot of times it's not only the country, it's regional as well, right? So you really need to understand those complexities of the project. And that's what makes it very complex. Yeah, and Cassie said it's especially frustrating finding these things out 4 to 5 months into the project. Absolutely, right? And there are companies. So companies, by nature, do not really like working on what I consider regulatory and compliance type of projects, and they don't like working on them because they don't make money from them, right? There's usually money out, so they usually put them off, put them off, put them off, and then you have a very short window to execute the project, and you're up against the wall, and a lot of these have very heavy fines associated with them, so can make it very, very complicated moving forward with those particular types of projects. And it's very frustrating, right? Because oftentimes you don't find out these things until you're assigned. Oftentimes we don't know what projects we're going to be assigned, right? The company makes a decision based on their portfolio level, their program level, and then it rolls down to the project level. And once you get to the project level, we find out, that XYZ projects is now assigned to you, the project manager, and then you figure out what your constraints are. And sometimes, they've been sitting on this work for 2 years, 3 years, they've known about it. But now, it's coming up to a couple of months now that we need to execute it. And oftentimes it makes it highly impossible to be what you would consider to be a successful project. So part of my study, my dissertation was about IT projects globally, and still, even though as much as we know today about project management, as old as project management is, IT projects fail 70 to 80% of the time worldwide, right? And usually it's due to complexity. And again, now that we are more global. After COVID, things became more complicated. We're integrating with a lot of different systems, not always within our own country. It makes things highly complex, right? So we really need to understand what it is that we're doing and ask a whole lot of questions, right? There's no such thing as a dumb question. And as a project manager, you can be sure that the one that you don't ask or you think about and think, I'll worry about it later. That'll be the one that will sneak up on you and get you in the end. So make sure whatever you're thinking about, put it out there. As a project manager, we are not the subject matter expert. That's why we have project teams. So we want them to be able to participate within the project, and that's what they're for, right? That's what the project resources are for. Okay, good questions. All right, so let's pop over to the first assignment. So in Module 1, Global Project Definition, do you need to review the module materials in the lesson, first of all. Then you'll need to complete the research and locate 2 peer-reviewed articles regarding global project definitions. Then you'll need to create an abstract for each article, and then write a 2 to 4 page paper that differentiates the definition of global projects based on the information in those articles. So what are the similarities and what are the differences? And do you agree with the definitions, and why or why not? And then you'll be graded using the rubric within the assignment. So the requirements of the assignment, again, is creating the abstract, writing the paper based on global project definitions, following the instructions in the tab, and save your file as a .doc or .docx. Word depends on how old it is, right? .doc or .docx are both acceptable. So your response should be, again, 2 to 4 pages in length and with APA writing requirements. So here's where you need to make sure that you are supporting your thoughts, right? You can agree or disagree, but when you're telling me why or why not, you need to be able to support it with whatever your findings are within the reading material that you research, right? The peer-reviewed articles. So you should use the university's library to do that. So that's the first assignment. Pretty straightforward. So before I move on, though, does anybody have any questions about that assignment at all?
Yeah, I have one quick question about that assignment. So do we need to write 2 separate papers, like one for each article, or do we need to do 2 abstracts and then 1 paper?
It's 2 abstracts and 1 paper.
Okay,
it's just one assignment, right? Yeah, but good question. All right, any other question? All right, then we'll move on to the next. Assignment 2 is infographic, project management, leadership, knowledge areas. So reviewing the module materials and lessons in the module, you want to research and locate at least, again, 2 peer-reviewed scholarly articles using tools found in the Macmillan Library regarding project management, leadership, knowledge areas. Based on the information you found in the article, analyze and describe which areas will apply to global projects. Using your preferred tool for visual response creation, prepare an infographic that visually describes at least 2 of the knowledge areas of global project leadership. It's optional. Information about infographics can be found on infographic resource tab. So there is a direct link on this assignment to infographics. If you've not done one before, it gives you information on how to do one, and even provides a template. And again, same kind of thing, you need to provide and comply with any APA writing requirements. So, which means if you provided a reference, you need to make sure the reference is included in your assignment, or if you have a citation, an in-text citation, you need to make sure that's also represented. And again, within the university library, if you need help with APA writing standards, you should be able to find it there as well. Any questions about assignment 2? Okay. And lastly, Tech Live reflection. So again, each week after Tech Live, you'll complete a brief reflection. The reflection allows you to process, reflect upon the session and what you've learned. You're also able to ask any questions you might have after attending the session or viewing a session recording. And I'll answer your questions either live or provide feedback via Canvas in your emails. So again, they're worth 10 points for each reflection assignment. And you need to attend and participate in the live session or watch the session recording, then write a 1 paragraph about what you thought and learned. Also, be sure to note any questions you have. So this is also, not just the live session. It can be about the reading material and the research you've done. It can be anything related to the discussion post and whether you agree or disagree, and kind of tell me why. So again, 1 paragraph, it's not much, right? It shouldn't take you very long to do. So I highly encourage you to do it. And again, every semester I have a student or 2 who chooses not to do them at all. But again, it's extremely helpful to get you, if you don't do well 1 week versus another, this is enough to usually put you back on track and keep you, at the best possible grade. I want you to be successful and I want you to do well in the course. So I highly, recommend that you complete them along with the other coursework, right? So of course you can't pass if you don't finish all the coursework. but of course, people, figure out, I don't have to do the reflections every week, and it doesn't amount to that much. But again, it does make a difference in the end, especially if you're on the fence. All right. Any questions about live reflections? All righty. And that's it for the first week, right? So, again, we'll do this every week, right? And if you have any questions about anything, you can certainly reach out to me. Send it to me by email at mcpierrazio01@indianatech.edu. I get back to you within 24 hours. If you are covering some topic, regardless of what week it is, and things aren't making sense to you and you need to have a discussion, I'll be happy to do that too. Just send me an email with days and times that you are available. I'm generally available Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with the exception of nights that I do sessions like this. But of course, Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock are a good time if you have questions. But if you need a question before, let's say, related to your current assignment, reach out to me via email or, again, request that time, and then I'll try and make that work, or give me at least 2 or 3 options, and then I'll see how I can fit it into the schedule, and we'll talk through whatever the issue is or the understanding that you need. Also on Saturdays and Sundays, I can make myself available, and I generally do that from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time if you should need it. All right. So again, there's no question that you should hold back from asking, right? Always please make sure that you do. And I'm a bit different than some of the other professors in terms of I'm not as hard lined with the time that you submit your assignment and that sort of thing. I don't want you playing beat the clock and rushing through the assignment. I know that our lives are very complicated today. People work full time, and sometimes you're taking multiple courses. You've got families. So, if you're going to be late to something for whatever reason, maybe you're traveling, send me a quick email. Just say, Professor, I need another day. And, I'll grant you the extension. It's not a big deal. For me, it's more important that you understand the concepts and you take the time you need in order to do that. So, I don't like that to be every week, where I can't make an exception for every single week, but I certainly will make an exception if you run up across something that, is problematic. Your kids are sick, right? You're, again, traveling, life happens, right? So again, just send me a quick email. We'll get that approved in writing. That way, it doesn't negatively reflect on your grade. Because again, the bottom line is I want you to do well, and I want you to understand the content of the course. That's the most important part. All right. Although I would love for you to turn everything in on time, because I need you to do that as much and as often as you possibly can, so I can also grade everything, provide feedback in a timely manner, because this course, like most, bills week after week, right? So just do the best you can. All right. So that's it for this evening. Does anybody have any other additional questions before I let you go? All right. I'm not seeing anything. There is no example of the abstract in assignment 1. You'll just need to go and do the research and look for a peer-reviewed article with an abstract, right? There's plenty. There's tons of that kind of stuff out there. Again, if you have trouble finding it, reach out to me and I'll help you. Okay. If there's no other questions, thank you very much. Thanks for joining me. And we'll talk to you next week. And I look forward to seeing your assignments. Again, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great evening, everyone.